One of the most difficult things for students to do in the polar graphing unit is when given a graph, they need to write the equation of a limacon. So I'm going to be looking at problems number 4 through 6 on the Polar Graphing Desmos Review worksheet and giving you some tips about how to write the equation for a limacon graph. First of all, let me tell you that I will always clearly label 4 key points for you. Points where theta is 0, pi over 2, pi, and 3 pi over 2. But there's a couple things you will have to know in order to navigate this problem successfully. Number one, you need to know the symmetry for cosine and sine. You need to remember that cosine has horizontal symmetry, sine has vertical symmetry, and that positive cosine goes to the right, negative to the left, positive sine up, and negative sine down. So when we see this graph right here of this limacon, we see that this has it's a positive cosine type of symmetry. So we're going to be in this situation. Secondly, you need to recognize the basic equation for a limacon. So the basic equation for a limacon is going to be r equals a plus b, and in this case cosine theta. So we're looking at this basic equation here. So now the question is, what are a and b? So I want to teach you to focus on a first. Let's take a look at a little cosine graph. A cosine graph has 5 key points. These key points occur when theta is 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. Okay, so this is pi over 2. This is where we are at pi, 3 pi over 2. So basically what we know here is if theta, and here's my cosine of theta, theta is 0, cosine of theta is 1. Theta is pi over 2, cosine of theta is 0. Theta is pi, cosine of theta is negative 1. 3 pi over 2, cosine of theta is 0. And I would be back, when I get back to 2 pi, I'm back to 1 again. So I want you to notice these two right here. If theta is equal to pi over 2 or 3 pi over 2, and I probably shouldn't circle the 10 because that's a little misleading. Let's just label these. If we're at pi over 2 or 3 pi over 2, this is where cosine of that angle equals 0. So I know that cosine of pi over 2 equals 0, and I know that cosine of 3 pi over 2 equals 0. So when we're looking at our basic graph, if the cosine part is equal to 0, cosine of pi over 2 equals 0, then what is r going to equal? Well, just a. So let's just write this down. R equals a plus b cosine of pi over 2. R equals a plus b times 0, which is just a. So when we are at pi over 2, r just equals a. Well, I know that r equals 4 here, so that just means a is going to equal 4. So here's my equation. R is equal to 4 plus something cosine theta. So I just need to know what this number is. All right, so now I need to think about some other angles here. So I've got, let's look at my biggest number, 9. R is 9. So I know that when when we're at 0, cosine of 0, so here's 0, my angle 0, I can say, I already know that a is 4, so 4 plus b times cosine of 0 equals 9. Okay, r equals 9. So 4 plus something times cosine of 0 equals 9. Well, I already know cosine of 0 is 1. So r equals 4 plus b times 1 equals 9. Well, that means b just has to be 5. Okay, so let's think through this again. So my key values for cosine are 1, 0, negative 1, and 0. So when cosine of theta is 0, then r just equals 4. And that occurs at pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. So I always find that number first. Then the largest value for cosine is going to occur when I add these two numbers together, all right, so when 4 plus 5 is 9, when cosine of 0, which is equal to 1, gives me that largest value, 4 plus 5 is 9. Now, where do I get the negative 1? Well, at pi, cosine of pi is negative 1, so 4 plus 5 times negative 1 gives me the negative 1. All right, so start by thinking of the first number and then figure out what that second number is going to be. Now now that I've kind of gone through a little bit, with more detail, I'm going to kind of think it through a little more quickly on the second one. Now, if you think you've got it, you might want to try it first, pause, and then come back. But let me go through this one now. Okay, so here's the key points. I noticed that the cosine, the largest part, that this is cosine because it has horizontal symmetry. The largest part is to the left, so it's going to be something minus something cosine. So r is equal to blank minus blank cosine theta. So my first thing to do is look about where is cosine equal to 0. Okay, so remember my little cosine graph. Cosine equals 0 here and here. Remember, this is pi. That's my middle value. So we're talking about at pi over 2 and at 3 pi over 2, cosine is equal to 0. So if cosine of theta equals 0, then I'm just saying r is equal to a. So these two sideways numbers, 6, that's a. So this is just going to be a, this way and this way. Now, where do I get b? Well, I get b when I am when I add together these two numbers or subtract these two numbers is going to help me find b. So I know that these two numbers added together have to give me my biggest value if I think about the absolute value of them, and the difference of them has to give me my smallest value. Now, so I can see that 6 plus 3 is 9 and 6 minus 3 is 3. So let me put 3 in here and let's kind of think of why we end up with the 9 over on this side. So let's think about cosine of 0 equals 1 and cosine of pi equals negative 1. So when we're at 0, I'm saying r is equal to 6 minus 3 times 1, which equals 3. When I'm at pi is negative 1, so when I'm at pi, r equals 6 minus 3 times negative 1, which is 6 plus 3, which is 9. So this is when theta equals 0, and this is when theta equals pi. So there's where we get those numbers. Okay, so let's take a look at the third one now. This one is a sine graph, and it's in the positive direction, so I know that this is going to be r equals something plus something sine of theta. Now, where does sine equal 0? Let's think of our little sine graph. Sine equals 0 here and here, which is at 0 and at pi. So cosine, or sorry, not cosine, but used to doing cosine. Sine of 0 equals 0 and sine of pi equals 0. So I'm looking sideways to get the place where I just find a. So this is going to be a. This is going to be my first number, because if sine of 0 equals 0, then I'm going to have a plus b times 0, and so r is just going to equal a. So a is 5, because I go up 5 sideways either direction. Now my biggest number up here is 10. Okay, so this has to be 5 plus 5, because when at pi over 2, sine of pi over 2 equals 1, so when I'm at pi over 2, it's going to be 5 plus 5 times 1, which gives me 10. Where do I get the 0 here? Well, when I'm at 3 pi over 2, sine of 3 pi over 2 is equal to negative 1, so I have 5 plus 5 times negative 1, which is 5 minus 5, which gives me 0. Okay, so just kind of to summarize, okay, the first number tells you the width. So if you look at the line of symmetry and go sideways from the line of symmetry, that's the width of the figure. That's what your first number is. That's the constant. Okay, so here we're going sideways from the line of symmetry. Here we have a is equal to, what did we, 6. A is equal to 6. Okay, here we're going sideways from the line of symmetry. A is equal to 5. because here we have a vertical line of symmetry. Then we look at the largest number. Okay, so if we look at the largest number here, the largest value is 9. So these two numbers have to combine to give me 9. And the smallest number is -1. When I subtract them, I get -1. Okay, here the largest number is 9. So I have to think of 6 minus a -3. Okay, gives me 9. 6 minus 3 gives me 3. Here, 5 plus 5 gives me 10. 5 minus 5 gives me 0. So hopefully that'll help you when you are thinking through graphs of limacons.